Jay here for Scotty and Motty, and this is our weekend football roundup. I'm Jay, that's Scotty. How we doing, mate? That way.
I'm all right, mate. Yeah, good. Cheers, thank you. I've woke up. Yesterday's football sent me into a coma, so I'm hoping the post-match analysis doesn't do likewise.
Yeah, it wasn't the most exciting game. We'll kick off with that. Obviously, United getting the win after extra time at Carrow Road, 2-1. Harry Maguire, of all people, with the late winner that stopped us going to penalties, and I didn't fancy them penalties, by the way, against Tim Krul. Scotty, it wasn't a great game. What did you make of it? Do you think it was sort of a case of job done, we move on, or do you think there's anything more that you can look at and say we need to be a bit more careful there? Because Norwich are barely a Premier League team, and we did make hard work of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably the worst performance I've seen this season. I mean, we've had some shockers under Solskjaer this season, but it was the hardest game to watch, especially after how well we performed against Spurs in the second half, and now we tore Sheffield United apart. But I think it just shows the difference that our strongest 11, I believe, with most people, that it could challenge for the league. But then when you start looking deeper into the squad, we've just got so many average players, and I think it was very telling against Norwich. And I know Solskjaer has to come out and back his team and talk positively of them, but he was saying we have faith and trust in the lads. But how far is he expecting us to go with them? Because it was really like pulling teeth. I think Lingard is, I think he's gone beyond any sort of comeback now. I think he's one of them players, isn't he, where he gets to a certain age and you don't realise, he's going to turn a corner in a minute now. But he's past it. There was one little bit where he did a dribble, and it was like Lingard of old. But apart from that, and then when I say Lingard of old, that was Lingard who had potential, was going to go on and do something. And it's frustrating because for a couple of seasons, FA Cup as well, it was against Derby. He scored a blind, didn't he? If he was at Derby a few years ago, I think.
We scored in the FA Cup final, didn't he?
In the FA Cup final, yeah.
People forget that. It was an absolute worldie. I was at Wembley that day. He scored a Wembley winner, but because Van Gaal got sacked almost immediately and Jose got appointed the day after, he never really got the credit or the acknowledgement he deserves, because we sort of moved on. Listen, I wouldn't say I know Jesse Lingard, because I don't, but we have interviewed him on Devils before, and I know for a fact he's a big United fan. I know as well that from what I gather, the criticism he gets, I think it's like a bit sort of a vicious circle. The criticism he gets to him, and it affects his confidence, which causes him to play badly and get more criticism. So I don't know. I just feel with Lingard, I think it might be now the time to just move on, because he's only 27, is he? I think he's saying he's not having a great time of it. It's more than lack of form now. It's been a good year at least. He had that awful start, didn't he, of no assists and no goals, I think, for a calendar year or something.
Yeah.
And this is a player that less than 2 years ago, went to the World Cup and played every game. Well, every meaningful game. Was a big part of that Gareth Southgate's, semi-final team. So it's sad to me to see it, because I agree with you. I don't think he's up to it, but he's an easy target. He did a tweet after the game about, him on his.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah.
And it's just loads of people saying, "Get out of my club, leave our club." And whilst I think it's probably his time for him to move on, I don't like seeing him get a lot of stick. He came through the ranks. He's like I say, he's a United fan. He has had some good moments. Let's not forget that. He scored in the League Cup final, he scored in the FA Cup final, but we are going back a few years now. So I do think it's time to move on, because, I agree with you. He didn't really take his chance to change anyone's mind about, whether he's in competition or he's in contention, for a starting place. He doesn't even look good enough to sort of be a squad player, really, does he? Which is a shame. What did you make of Sergio Romero? Because some people are blaming him for the goal, and I'm just curious, because we'll move on to it in a minute, but Dean Henderson didn't have a great game for Sheffield United today against Arsenal. Some people are blaming Romero for Todd Cantwell's goal, and all of a sudden, I mean, you could argue that David De Gea's come out of this weekend looking quite good
and not playing a game.
It's a bit weird, isn't it? That so all of a sudden, people are going, well, actually, maybe we've been a bit harsh with David De Gea. Where do you stand on that? Do you think Romero was at fault for that game, or do you think or do you think it was just a great finish?
It's a bit of both, really. It was a great finish, and you can see the ball was sort of bending away from him, but you'd expect a keeper of his caliber to save it. I know Maguire turned around with a sort of look on his face that you should be saving that part of that shot, because Maguire had sort of pushed him out a bit further. But let's not take anything away from Norwich on that, because I think if anyone was going to score in that game, Norwich were the better team for large parts, and we're putting us in the break. And there's a lot of times they could have, that goal went in and may have been a mistake, but you've got to look further afield to how many chances you are. You know, just on average, they keep having shots. They're going to get one on target sooner or later. Do you know what I mean? But Romero was never going to be the person who takes David De Gea's place, was he? It was always going to be either Henderson, you know, to sort of come in, or we go out and buy somewhere else. But yeah, I agree with you. De Gea probably come out of the weekend the best in terms in terms of Man United keepers. But just going back to the Lingard thing, I don't want it to turn into a Lingard bashing, because his performance wasn't a sole bad performance. It was across the field. You know what I mean? All the players that sort of came in, and a lot of them have had more rest than the players that have played against Spurs and Sheffield United previously. So you'd think with a squad of our depth that they'd come in and have even more energy, but it wasn't. It was just so sluggish, and it just shows that, you know, these people like Mata, and I'm a huge Juan Mata fan, but he just drifts, and I think he's probably better off playing five-a-side or in a different league, a different league without the pace. Now, do you know what I mean? I think the game passes him by too much. And also one thing that I got frustrated with was I love Ighalo, but I don't think he should start games, because I think what happens is you set I think Solskjaer, when he plays Ighalo, you set the philosophy then that you're playing a target man football, because there was no width at all. A lot of it was having to be bombed forward to Ighalo. And it's and especially with Solskjaer's management skills, I don't think he has the now sort of change tact about 60, 70 minutes in. What once he sort of set in his way. Whereas when we play with like a Martial or Rashford up front, it's a lot more fluid football, a lot more modern game. Do you know what I mean? And that's not taking it away from Ighalo. It was great that he took his goal, but I do find when he's the star, he's the number one striker up front, I think that we do play a lot more long ball, but there was just mistakes all across the field. There was no energy. And if you're a player that you're trying to come through and you're going to challenge for places, because the game's going to come thick and fast, you'd expect to be able to, you know, to challenge a place or remove someone. There was nobody. There was was it Jermaine Jenas? I mean, he's an awful commentator, but even when he was struggling for a man of the match, and he had to award it to a United player, and he gave it to Maguire when he scored in the 118th minute, and that just shows how bad the performance was across the pitch. One thing that I made an ass of myself just before Maguire scored. I was tweeting. I know, yeah. I put a tweet out and it was like, chip it into the box, Maguire header, miss, and repeat. And as soon as I pressed send, looked up and Maguire. I was like,
I'd have screenshotted that if I'd have seen that and ran that right down your throat. Don't you worry about that, son. I missed that one.
Yeah, I did straight on the delete.
One thing I was going to say, you know, you said that David De Gea probably emerged out this weekend looking good. You could argue that maybe Victor Lindelof does as well, because I'm a big Eric Bailly fan, but I don't think he asked any questions, did he? Really? I know. I don't know. I just felt that I like Eric Bailly. He's good box office, but after that performance, would you expect him to be starting alongside Maguire in the Premier League now, or do you think Victor Lindelof is going to get his place straight back?
Yeah, I think Lindelof will judge it. We'll walk straight back in there. I mean, we if you're going to chop and change, I understand why you do it for the midfielders and the attacking players, but I'm a firm believer that you should be having a partnership between the back two all the time. And I think that was the problems before Maguire was signed, that there's so much chopping and changing with the centre pairings. And I know that they've been inconsistent, but a lot of the inconsistency comes from because you're not allowing a relationship to form between the two of them. I think Lindelof should go in alongside Maguire till the end of the season, but I think United will be in the market again in the summer with our £4.65 to spend on another centre back. But yeah, Bailly looked great when he first signed and stuff, and you say blockbuster, but you don't really want to see a blockbuster.
He's exciting and interesting to watch
in a Mr. Bean sort of way.
Yeah, like he can. I think he's a very naturally talented defender. I think especially he's got all the physical attributes. He's quick, he's strong, he can tackle, he's fearless. He can be good on the ball as well. I think the main problem with Eric Bailly is he just doesn't play enough football. He comes in like once every 3 weeks. He seldom plays 4 or 5 games on the spin. And for a defender, that's essential. I mean, it's essential for any footballer, really. But like you said, especially a defender, when you're trying to forge a partnership. I won't dwell too much on this game because it's almost done. One thing I will ask you quickly before we move on. How did you rate Bruno Fernandes' performance? Because I've seen, bizarrely, I saw some people being overly critical of him on Twitter. I think you can be critical of any United player, but I just saw some people saying he was rubbish and this, that, and the other. I couldn't believe I was reading that. What did you make of it?
I think there was a few wayward passes, but look, he's made a rod for his own back. I think every game he's played for United since he signed, he's been by far and away the best player on the pitch. Now I think you sort of build that expectation, and then when you have it, you allowed an off day. There was a lot of I thought some crossfield passes were a bit wayward, but like I said, it shouldn't be on him. Man United aren't or shouldn't be a one-man team. Do you know what I mean? So it's you're allowed a day off, but it wasn't a woeful performance. A lot of the criticism I see is coming from non-United fans, as far as I'm concerned. If they've got United in their bio, then they're nonsense, because I'm tired of this sort of picking players apart. You've got, just to go back to Lingard, judge them on the pitch, all right, but just stop picking them apart left, right, and centre. You're allowed a bad day, but unless it's a run of games, then don't start being critical like that. It's ridiculous.
I get a bit suspicious of some of it, me. I mean, I know this might sound a bit ironic coming from someone who's on a fan channel, but sometimes I think that, certain fans have a go at a player and then other fans stick up for him, and it becomes a sort of a soap opera. And sometimes it seems a little bit engineered to me. Maybe I'm being overly cynical and suspicious. No, I agree. If you had to pick a man of the match, you're saying Jermaine Jenas, who slept his way through most of the commentary from what I gather. Picked Harry Maguire, didn't it? Who would you have picked as your man of the match?
I don't. I'd struggled. What I loved when he came on was Brandon Williams. He did a fantastic last minute interception, didn't he?
That was a great tackle there.
Yeah, fantastic tackle. And for me, I'd like him to sort of replace Shaw in the next game. If you're looking at players that came in and gave a decent performance, I thought he was really good. The energy that he sort of runs with that lad, and I think Shaw sometimes when he gets into the final third of the box, he takes too many touches. He divers and he doesn't know how to cross and stuff. But I think Brandon Williams probably played about 20 minutes, did he? On the extra time and stuff. So yeah, just based on that alone, Maguire got the goal, but I don't think he was outstanding. That's great that he got the goal, but there was nothing really special aside from that, I don't think. By yourself?
I thought, oddly enough, even though Bruno did do a lot of wayward passes, I thought he did well in terms of trying to make things happen and the energy he brought to the game. He was always battling and hustling and trying to create. I thought Pogba played well when he came on. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult really because no one stood out. I mean, Agallo got his goal and I thought he was hustling. He got the lad sent off as well, which is obviously a massive bonus. But it just seemed like a load of sort of 6 out of 7 performances across the board. There wasn't anyone, with a couple of the subs who came on having a 7 to just get us over the line. But there wasn't anyone that stood out. I mean, maybe you could argue you could give it Maguire because of his goal, and it comes back to that sort of basic thing. And I think he did okay defensively. I wouldn't have blamed him for the goal. But sorry, I tell you what, I've almost forgot him. I don't know how, because I was raving about him. My choice would have been Nemanja Matic. 100%. Yeah. I almost forgot. He came on and he just... The bad thing with Matic is he does exactly what we need. He sits in front of that defence and allows Bruno and Pogba to get forward. And that's what we need, one man who can do all that. But he's the wrong side of 30. And long term, it's going to have to be Fred McTominay or another, because I want to see one holding midfielder rather than 2. But I don't know if Fred and McTominay are going to be able to do it on their own. But Matic, I thought, was superb. I thought he really was. He's been really good.
He's been good since he come back. Since we come back from lockdown. I mean, even since he sacked, there was rumours he was going to leave, wasn't he, in January? Yeah. And I think since it came that he was staying, he's definitely sort of improved. And you're right. It's frustrating because he epitomises the sort of player you want behind Fernandes and Pogba, isn't it? And it's like, how many of them players are there in the world to sign? But yeah, I agree. He had a great game. Yeah,
he certainly did. Now, we know we're going to face Chelsea in the semi-finals at Wembley, I believe. Makes loads of sense, that, doesn't it? If you can have it in an empty ground, what the fuck is the point in making them all go down to Wembley? Why not just pick somewhere in the middle, like at Villa Park or something? I don't know. I know it's got to be at a neutral ground, but it just seems fucking stupid. Anyway, I know this was planned before coronavirus, but now we know we've got it. We could have changed it. Anyway, did you have a chance to watch Chelsea and Leicester? Because the interesting thing for me here is Leicester haven't looked great, have they, since they come back from lockdown, and they've really been struggling. And it was it wasn't the most exciting game, but Chelsea obviously got the win. I just wonder what you make of it and what you make of not just Chelsea, but what you make of Leicester as well since we've come back. Because, like I say, they don't seem to have not even picked up where they left off. They just seem to be in a bit of a rut.
Yeah, the game was Chelsea weren't great in the first half, and I think Frank Lampard came out in the press conference afterwards and said that he'd had to go at a few of the players, I think. But and Leicester could have taken the lead, but they're not. Leicester aren't creating chances, and obviously as a result of that, aren't scoring any goals. As United fans, that's fantastic for us to see, but I do wonder now if, because they haven't got the FA Cup hanging over them, they can throw everything into the league. So that might be it might be better in their long term if they're trying to hold on to the top four. Chelsea were. It's interesting when you see the parallels between Lampard and Solskjaer, obviously two former legends going back to their club. So I think there's a lot riding on this game in terms of how they look back at their seasons. Because I wanted to ask your opinion on this, on who you think's actually had the better season, with Frank Lampard going into a Chelsea team that's just lost Eden Hazard. He's not allowed to buy any players, and now they're in the top four quarterfinals of the FA Cup. Or is Solskjaer having, so it'd be quite interesting. I know, and when you take away the head-to-heads, because obviously Solskjaer's got the one-upmanship on that, but in terms of consistency, would you say Chelsea have got the edge over United this season in terms of performances?
Well, I know Chelsea are, what are they, 5 points above us in the league?
Yeah.
But I think it's weird because I think Solskjaer had a lot to do this season that perhaps he doesn't get enough credit for. He had to have a bit of an overhaul. And in a perverse way, I think I give Lampard credit for sticking to his guns because they had the transfer ban, but he brought in the kids. When I say kids, I mean in early 20s, but you know what I mean. Tammy Abraham, Mason Mount, those type of players. And he stuck with him. He didn't drop him and play like Olivier Giroud and other players that had more experience. He said, this is what we're going to do, and we're sticking with it. And it's worked by and large, you know, and he's done a good job. I think he's done a good job. But I think Ole's, for me, I'd give him the edge, and I'm not just being biased, because Ole had a lot more difficult decisions to make. Like, you know, he got Romelu Lukaku, Alexis Sanchez, Marcus Rojo, Chris Smalling, Ashley Young have all gone. You know, these are big players with a lot of experience. Some of them are title-winning players. We haven't got a lot of them left in the squad. And obviously, you know, Lukaku was one of our most expensive striker, and his goal-scoring record is actually very good despite some of his performances. And Ole's made these tough decisions. He's brought through the likes of Mason Greenwood, Brandon Williams, who you just mentioned. He's blooded them in the right way. And I like what he's done with Martial and Rashford, where he sort of got them settled. Martial, you're through the middle. Rashford, you're on the left. And then the right-hand side is up for grabs. And also with Pogba as well. You know, a lot of people at the beginning of the season, just get rid of Pogba, bomb him out, just get rid of him. And he didn't. He's sort of, I don't know how much you can say he's down to Ole or down to the fact we couldn't get the money for him. But whatever, he's made it, you know, and put us in a position where Pogba's back in the team, playing football. We brought in Bruno, and I think, you know, it's not Ole's fault we didn't get him until January. He obviously wanted him as soon as we could get him. We didn't get Haaland. Ole obviously wanted him. I don't blame Ole for that. But despite all this, you know, we're still in the FA Cup. We've got the Europa to come, and we're in with a shout at top four. So I think Ole's, you know, he's got to be given credit for that. But you and me know better than anyone. It's like, it's too early to judge. If at the end of this season, Ole's won nothing and finished sixth, and Frank Lampard's won the FA Cup and finished third.
Yeah.
Obviously, Frank Lampard's had a better season. But so far, I'd just slightly give the edge to Ole, because I think he's had a lot more difficult things to do, and he's handled them well. You know, he's not been perfect, so some of the results have been poor. But as well, it amazes me Chelsea so far ahead of us, because they've had some bad results. They've lost, I'll have to double check this. Didn't they lose?
Yeah, January. January. They had an absolute. That was sort of their worst run of the season. But I think in some ways it was a blessing for Lampard to go in under the transfer ban, because it sort of removed any sort of criticism. Even if they finished top six, you know what I mean? I think it allowed that season to sort of bed himself in his philosophy and stuff. So in many ways, I think Chelsea fans would probably be overexcited that they probably overreached this season in terms of where they are reaching an FA Cup quarter-final, and it looks more than likely after the City win the other night, they are probably going to get top four. So I think in some ways, with that, the pressure's off, whereas Solskjaer, because he'd already had a season before him and the expectation level at United, I think we were expecting to go and kick on, weren't we, with the unbeaten record and so on and so forth. So the pressure was there for Solskjaer. And when you just lay out the stuff that he's actually had to overcome, and he doesn't get the credit he deserves, and I'm guilty for it myself. He's having that sort of steel that he's not bowing to certain pressures to get rid of Pogba and stuff like that, and he's very much sticking to his own guns, rightly or wrongly. I think he is doing that. But like I said, the Rashford and Lukaku, not the Rashford and the Martial, 19 goals each. You know what I mean? I think Martial's equalled his greatest ever season at United, hasn't he? Since was it under Van Gaal when I think Martial got
yeah, in the league I think he's better now.
Yeah,
but I think Roy might be he's equaled it. But either way, yeah, they're gonna have the best ever season, or they're having the best ever season. And Ole's got to take credit, because it would have been easy for Ole to say, right, Lukaku was Jose's main man. I'll carry on with that, and we'll try and make that work. But he didn't. He had an idea of what he wanted to do, and he's done it well. So you can't, like you say, you can't fault him for that. I think as well, Lampard gets a lot of credit because Eden Hazard left, and he still managed to do this without Eden Hazard. But I don't know. I mean, I think Chelsea actually got rid of Eden Hazard at the right time.
Looking at the form that Hazard's had since he's gone over to Spain,
and
he
was very erratic, wasn't he, Eden Hazard? He was very sort of fits and starts. He'd have 5 or 6 games where he was unplayable. Then he'd go missing for 3 or 4 games. Now, during his career, obviously, he's won titles at Chelsea, and he's scored a lot of goals and a lot of assists. But there'd be seasons where you couldn't rely on him, and I just think, in a perverse way, again, maybe that sort of made it a little bit easier for Frank Lampard, because you're not building your team around that one player in the way that Chelsea almost have become. You're having to think differently and do things a little bit differently. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying, the fact that Eden Hazard left is a good thing for Frank Lampard. I just think he gets too much credit sometimes for the fact he's done all this with Eden Hazard leaving, if that makes any sense. The other teams that are in the FA Cup, we'll start with Arsenal because they played first. Arsenal, Sheffield United, I don't know if you watched this one. I was mentioning it earlier. Dean Henderson probably at fault a little bit for Arsenal's second goal. It was at the near post. Sheffield United were a bit unlucky, actually. I felt they were a better team. And they're struggling post-lockdown. And I think they're struggling more than anyone with 2 things. One, with the sub situation, because if you've got a bigger squad like we have, it's making 5 or 6 subs a game, because you can make 6 if you've got extra time. It's fantastic. If you're a tight, close-knit team like Sheffield United, you haven't got 17 players who you can really rely on. They sort of have 12 or 13 who are their core, and that's it. And also no crowd, because Bramall Lane was like their, what they would consider a fortress, and you've not got a crowd there. It's not the same, is it? So I feel they're suffering. What did you make of that? Do you think, start with Dean Henderson, do you think he's at fault there? Is it one of those you just shrug it off and go, these things happen? Or do you think maybe the sort of questions around him taking over from David De Gea getting into his head?
Maybe. I mean, the thing is, when you play for Sheffield United, you are ultimately going to get tested a lot more than David De Gea does at Man United. So you're not going to get the roles aren't going to be reversed. You wouldn't know how De Gea would perform behind a Sheffield United defence. Do you know what I mean? So I think he was at fault for the goal. But again, like we're talking about Romero, I think mistakes are going to be creeping in with keepers. I just like him back at United to try and put more pressure on De Gea. Not that he'd automatically come in and take over his spot. But I thought Sheffield United were the better team. This is huge for Arsenal, though. This I think out of all the managers that are left in the FA Cup, Pep still got the Champions League to go for. United challenging for top 4, Europa League still be a positive season. Chelsea, we said, are still going to get top 4. But Arsenal have got absolutely nothing else to play for now. So it's whether Arteta really wants the pressures of Europa League football next year by getting because he's probably got more problems when we talk about new managers. He's probably got more problems than anyone trying to rebuild that Arsenal team. But going into it, you'd probably say just the starting 11, Arsenal probably should. There were no surprises. I know it's the magic of the FA Cup and stuff, but there was no surprises this weekend in terms of the teams that have gone through. You'd have expected Arsenal, despite form and stuff, but Sheffield United with the lesser form team for Arsenal to go through. But it probably would have been worse for Sheffield United to go through and to put more pressure on that squad that you said hasn't. They haven't got a lot of squad to call on, and the games are coming thick and fast. And you just don't know where their next win's going to come from. And like Leicester, they might find themselves slipping down the pecking order with Wolves getting another win yesterday.
Yeah, we'll get onto that in a minute. No, I agree with everything you said there, and there was a little bit of pressure on Arteta, I felt, when he came back, because they were not pressure, but a little lot of criticism because they haven't been playing well since they come back. But he's obviously, they've picked up some wins now, so he'll be happy. I know, like you say, they're in the shout of the FA Cup. If he wins the FA Cup in his first season, he's a hero. He's not quite in a legendary status that Ole is at United and Frank Lampard is at Chelsea, but he's well respected anybody Arsenal fans because of his time there. So I think if he can win an FA Cup in his first season, they'll absolutely fucking love him. The other name in the hat, as you mentioned, is Man City. They had a relatively comfortable win, I think, over Newcastle. No massive surprises there. Obviously, the thing for us is if we beat Chelsea, it's the Manchester derby probably in the final. It could be depending on how they get on against Arsenal. Did you see the City game? See against Newcastle? I mean, other than the Dwight Gale chance, I don't think Newcastle were ever really in it, were they?
No, I mean, mate, it was probably the most one-sided game I've seen in a long time. I think at one point City had like 87% possession. Newcastle have done well since they've come back from the break and stuff, and I think a lot of the players there have sort of upped the game, and Bruce as well. I know a lot of Newcastle fans didn't want Bruce, but he's going to keep him to safety in the quarter-final in the FA Cup. It's a decent run, but again, when you're talking now about Bramall Lane for the Blades, I think that'd have been a different game if that had been, how many 45,000, 55,000 at St James's Park.
The biggest grounds in the country, St James's.
Yeah, that may have made a difference, but it was sort of expected. I thought the City that played against Chelsea and the City that turned up today were so far removed from each other. And we'll not talk about the aftermath of that, but they were completely different beasts. And I think there is pressure on Pep as well to sort of deliver a trophy this season. I think as far behind as the City have fell behind Liverpool this season. And the performances, I think he needs a trophy this. I mean, he's never under any pressure from the board or stuff like that. But I just think going into next season, he'd like to have some silverware. And I don't think they'll win the Champions League now with the fans not being in the stadium and stuff. I just can't see it.
I hope you're right, because that would be the season from hell if they won the Champions League and the Scousers won the league. I'd just give up on football. But yeah, I think
I'm clipping that.
Yeah, honestly, mate, I couldn't cope. I do think though, especially with Leeds getting promoted as well, that's like the fucking icing on the cake. That one.
Oh, Armageddon, mate.
I do think there is a little bit of not so much pressure, but again, I keep using the word criticism of Pep. The fact that he's not won the Champions League since he left Barcelona, despite being at a Bayern Munich team that dominated the Bundesliga, and despite being at a City team that for 2 seasons dominated or had record number of points. And during that time, Klopp's obviously lifted it with Liverpool as well. So I do think there is an expectation. I think there for him personally, I think it's a little bit gets to him. I've been at press conferences where it's been brought up, and he's never happy about his Champions League record since he's not been to a final. I don't think since he left Barcelona. I think the best he did at Bayern Munich was the semis, where I think they got a bit of a spanking. And obviously it's City. I think they've not even made the semis. I think they made the semis. Did
semis against Tottenham? Well, not the semis.
Sorry, it was the quarters when because Tottenham played Ajax in the semis.
Ajax, yeah.
Lucas Moura got his hat trick. And then when City did get to the semis, that was under Pellegrini, I think. So yeah, so again, it's a little bit of a monkey on his back that he'll probably want to address. So we'll see. He might. I mean, again, City should have a squad to do both the FA Cup and the Champions League. But in terms of their league performance, people go, "Oh well, they're still miles ahead of Leicester or whatever," and they've still they're only ones who've sort of made a stab at it in terms of the title race. But the 23 points behind Liverpool, that's a fucking disgrace. That's sweet this out. We finished 22 points behind the City at the time, the title winners under Moyes. That was always like the worst title defense ever. So if you're like 20 points behind the title winners and you're defending that title, that's just not good enough. And I think he needs, like you say, a trophy to prove that it's not been a disastrous season. Because I think going for a team that's dominated the way they have domestic football, if you go to the next season and win nothing and finish 20-odd points behind the Scousers, then you've got serious issues to address.
Do you think that he's too stubborn in his ways, Pep? And before any City fans get on at me, I think he's an absolutely fantastic coach. But I just mean when he's very idealistic and he knows how he wants to play. He wants his players to play football and play out from the back. But when Liverpool were challenging for the league, I think it was about 2-3 seasons ago, and they were scoring. I don't think this Liverpool team that won the league this year was as good as it was maybe last year or the year before when they were scoring goals for fun. But Klopp identified that they were shipping goals at the back, and he sort of said, right, well, we don't want to be all out counter and attack because what we're doing is we're scoring goals, but we're dropping points. Whereas Pep's philosophy is to still all about scoring more goals. But they are, they have like conceded ridiculous ones, and we're dropping points left, right, and centre, which has put them in this position. So do you think he's a bit stubborn in, not changing his ways? And he's had some bad buys as well in centre defensive. I mean, the John Stones experiment didn't really work out. They've never really replaced Company. And the next season, Silva's going. And I think Fernandinho is a huge player at their team, but even he's probably about roughly around 30 years old. So they've got their work cut out in the summer. And it'd be interesting if they've going to fall victim, if they're found guilty of this FFP thing and they're not allowed to sign any players. So it'd be interesting what happens there, the whole dynamics at Man City, because De Bruyne has said if City can't play Champions League football, he may have to look at his options. Will Guardiola want to stay around under a ban on the Champions League? Will that stop them from attracting players? I know money talks. But once that Champions League thing's gone, it does throw a whole lot of questions at Man City next season.
Yeah, no, there's loads of questions there. You're right. I think Pep will stick it out at City. I think there's a lot going on there with the City group and everything. The owner's team in football in Spain that his brother's involved in. He seems quite settled, and I think from what I gather from people that are around the club, they think that he's regardless of whether they get a Champions League ban or whatever, he's in it for not the long haul, but at least a bit longer than sort of ducking out now. In terms of the question you said about missing Company and Fernandinho dropping, they lose a lot for me when they drop Fernandinho into centre defence, because he's so good as a central midfielder, as that defensive midfielder. He's the type of player that we need at Old Trafford. Pains me to say it. He can just sit in front of the defence and just sort of tidy things up and give it to the attacking players. And I think the fact they lost Company and then Fernandinho's had to drop in because, as you mentioned, Stones in up to it. Laporte got injured. Otamendi could be a bit of a disaster. So it's just not really worked out. And I think they bought Rodri, didn't they, as a midfielder? He's a bit hit and miss.
Yeah.
Foden's a different type of player. So I don't know if he's too set in his ways. I think he's been slightly overconfident with some of his signings that, okay, this is enough, especially with Liverpool not really buying anyone in the summer other than the reserve keeper, Adrian. But they knew, I think Klopp knew that his team were ready. I think they were ready to do it again, to do what he'd done again. And he didn't really need to buy anyone and strengthen because they were pretty strong all over the pitch. And he was proven right. Whereas Pep probably thought, okay, Company's going in, but Laporte steps up, or we've got Stones, or, Fernandinho's getting on a bit, but not to worry because I've got Rodri or I've got whoever who can step in, Gundogan or whatever. But yeah, it's not really worked out that way. And I think maybe there's been a little bit of, I don't know if you call it complacency, overconfidence, or naivety even with some of these signings, and they've been there. They have been left wanting, and this is a City team that, yes, they're very good, and on their day, as we've seen today, can sort of blow teams apart or can just dominate teams. But we've watched City a few times. United have beaten them a few times this season, which is almost unheard of recently for us to beat them more than once in a season. We've seen them losing a lot of daft games. They didn't really turn up against Chelsea the other day. Earlier on the season, Norwich, for example, games like that, where you're like, oh, everyone thought it was a blip, but it wasn't, because it happened a few times where they had these sort of poor results. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the season. Again, it's one of those, isn't it? It's like you can judge Pep on what goes on at the end of the season, and whether if they lift the Champions League, it's an amazing season for him. The first one was lifted. He wins it for the first time since he's left the Nou Camp. Everyone's happy. Just before we wrap up, mate, just a couple of Premier League games. I mean, if we're being brutally honest, let me just get to the results. The main one we want to talk about, obviously, is, I mean, I'm not too bothered about Watford and Southampton. Obviously Watford are still in a lot of trouble. But the Wolves game, they beat Villa over the weekend. Wolves are just winning games, aren't they? Looking good value for that top four. I mean, they're on 52 points now. They've played a game more than Chelsea and a game more than us. If we win our game, we've got better goal difference. We could go ahead of them. But there's a bit of a juggernaut with Wolves, isn't it? And it's becoming worrying, because I think it's gone from sort of everyone thinking it was between us and Chelsea for that top four spot. So now you've got a mix between us, Chelsea and Wolves. And some people would argue that maybe Wolves are the favourites.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a big fan, and I know you are as well, big fan of how Wolves have sort of been playing since they got promoted. And before Solskjaer got the United job, I was called a lunatic for suggesting Nuno, but I think he's an absolutely phenomenal manager. I'd be amazed how Wolves keep hold of him, the backroom staff, and the likes of Jimenez.
I'll tell you how they'll do it, mate, because they've got a Chinese billionaire owner and you've got Jorge Mendes, the Portuguese super agent.
Yeah.
So while I get you coming, and Nuno deserves credit, the one thing I sort of have an issue with is this. I know you're not guilty of it, but there's people that are like, Wolves, what a lovely story, what a romantic tale. I'm like, all right, bankrolled by a billionaire, and you're getting players from Portugal that you can just nitpick, cherry pick. So there is that to it. But no, I get where you're coming from because you can't fault him. He's done a great job.
But and I think most seasons, people go, "Oh, Wolves had their year last year; they were great," and then the following year they follow up and just be as impressive. I mean, just to compare them to like when Burnley first came up, everyone thought Burnley were great, and then and then they peaked and went down, went back down because they were punched above their weight. But this is Wolves now. Do you know what I mean? Wolves with this backing, with this manager, with this team, they are consistently going to be a top 6 challenging team for me. I firmly believe that they are where they are for a reason. They consistently keep doing it. I was kind of hoping, as United fans, that they tend to start slow, Wolves, in the league sometimes, and I thought that they might. After the break, that they might drop a few points, but no, they've completely picked back up, and then they're just. We can be happy that they've got some difficult fixtures all going ahead. I think they play Arsenal away, they play Arsenal at home. They've got Everton, Sheffield United in the league, so I could see them still dropping points. But as long as we win all our games, we should be able to. Then I firmly believe that Leicester will just fall well off the pace as well with the form there, and then we should nip top 4.
We've got Leicester and Chelsea and Wolves play each other, I think, on the last day of the season. So you could potentially go into a final day or a final weekend where it's all to play for. It's like a little mini, and then obviously I think Wolves are still in the Europa as well, which that could be a difficult for United. We could end up because we like playing Wolves, don't we? Play them every other week.
That'd be Sod's Law. Europa League final. Where's the final this year?
It might be in Gdansk, innit? But I don't know if they've changed it. I think it might be there, but I don't know if there's, because I'm not au fait with what's going on with the coronavirus, whether they're changing it or whatever. But I imagine they're probably keeping it in the same venue.
I wouldn't be surprised to see a United Wolves Europa League Cup final just to make it the 12th time we play.
I hope it's better than the games we played them so far this season.
Oh my God.
It's terrible, aren't they? Horrible games of football. And it's funny because you mention it and you're right. Nuno plays good football. They've got some great players like, Jimenez and who's the other kid, Ruben Neves and players like that. And Traore, obviously, Adama Traore. You've got all these exciting players, and so have we. We've got Martial, we've got Rashford, we've got Greenwood, but the games by and large have just been fucking dire. Do you know what I mean? It's just been like pulling teeth on it. So we'll see. Anyway, we'll see how we get on with that.
I'm going to put you on the. I'm going to put you on the spot before we go, though, Jay. Who's going to make the FA Cup final?
I'm going to go for. I'll probably get this completely wrong, but I'll go for a Manchester derby in the final.
And to who? And United win.
Of course, man. Ollie's got Pep's number, hasn't he? Do you know what I mean?
There we go.
There you go. There's your clip when we get fucking spanked off Chelsea next time.
Right. Well, I won't let you. I won't let you go alone then, and I'll go for a Manchester derby and United beat them as well.
Man. Do you know what
Boys
I mean?
together, man.
Exactly. Okay.
Oh man,
20 years of smoking weed, us, yeah. This has been Scotty and Mike. We're back with a top 5. We'll also be back with guests as well. We've got guests now and everything. It's all happening. And the usual podcast. So thanks for everyone subscribing. We're nearly at 600 at the time of recording, so I think we're about 10 off it. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I've been Jay. I've been Motty even. That's been Scotty.
I've been Scotty. Nice one.